On the 19th of July, 2026, the World Cup final will be played in a $1.6 billion stadium in New York, the biggest sporting event on the planet, held on land that the United States Environmental Protection Agency has spent decades trying to clean and still hasn't finished. But that's only the first layer. Because beneath the streets of New York City, the exact streets that millions of football fans will walk this summer, there is another world entirely. One the city would prefer you never looked at. One that no public map has ever drawn in full. Down there, sealed subway stations sit exactly as they were left in 1945, brass chandeliers. Hand-laid ceramic vaults imported from Europe, untouched for more than 80 years, preserved in complete darkness. Down there, tunnels that appear on no official blueprint are home to thousands of people who have no records, no registered address, and no name in any city database. Down there, a wartime bunker, 9 stories below street level, once operated under shoot-to-kill orders, and still exists today, directly beneath one of the busiest transit hubs on Earth. And somewhere beneath Midtown Manhattan, a private rail line that has never appeared on any subway map was used to move an American president in and out of the city without a single person knowing he was there. New York calls itself the city that never sleeps. The truth is, part of this city has never seen daylight at all. This is the story of that part. Let's start at the surface. MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey, 20 minutes by car, from the center of Manhattan. Capacity, 82,500. Construction cost, $1.6 billion, making it the most expensive stadium ever built at the time it opened in 2010. On the 19th of July 2026, this is where the World Cup final will be held, a match that could draw the largest television audience in human history. From the outside, MetLife looks exactly like what a 21st century stadium should be. Modern, massive, almost perfect. But look down at what it's standing on. The ground beneath MetLife Stadium is called the Meadowlands, a vast wetland running along the Hackensack River, pressing right up against New York City. The name sounds like somewhere peaceful. Open fields, clean water, quiet. The reality was never close to that. Throughout the 20th century, the Meadowlands served as the waste dump for the entire New York metropolitan area. Industrial refuse, toxic chemicals, military waste, all of it poured in here. Oil refineries, dye plants, and chemical processing facilities discharged directly into the waterways, running through the marsh for decades, with no meaningful regulation and no accountability. The result: Barry's Creek, a waterway flowing just a few hundred meters from MetLife Stadium, became one of the most mercury-contaminated freshwater ecosystems in the United States. The EPA designated it a Superfund site in the 1980s, triggering the federal government's emergency cleanup program for the nation's most hazardous locations. 40 years later, the cleanup is still not complete. And that's not even the part that should worry you most. Because alongside the industrial waste, the Meadowlands accumulated something else entirely. Something that no official body has ever formally acknowledged. For decades, the marshland was used by organized crime families in New Jersey and New York to dispose of things they didn't want found. Not chemical barrels, not factory runoff. Bodies. There are no official figures. There can't be because the entire point was to leave no trace. But in court records from organized crime prosecutions spanning multiple decades, the Meadowlands appears again and again as a familiar destination where witnesses disappeared, where enemies stopped existing, where evidence dissolved quietly into the mud. The swamp takes everything in. It gives nothing back. In 1976, while Giant Stadium, the direct predecessor to MetLife, was under construction on this same ground, a rumor began circulating that has never fully gone away, that the body of Jimmy Hoffa, the former Teamsters Union boss who vanished in July 1975 and was never found, was somewhere inside the concrete of that stadium. The FBI investigated, multiple times. They brought in ground-penetrating radar. They found nothing. But they never ruled it out either. In 2010, Giant Stadium was demolished. MetLife Stadium rose on the same footprint. In July 2026, 82,500 people will sit on that ground to watch the World Cup final. And beneath them, the Meadowlands will still be keeping its secrets. Now let's go beneath the city itself. On the 27th of October 1904, the New York City subway opened for the first time. It was a defining moment. The largest city in America finally had an underground transit system capable of moving hundreds of thousands of people a day. And the first station, the starting point of the entire network, the most architecturally ambitious, the most carefully designed, the one built to announce to the world what New York was capable of, was City Hall Station. Today, no one is allowed inside it. It sits directly beneath New York City Hall. You can stand on the sidewalk above, look down through the ventilation grates, and catch the faintest trace of light coming up from below. But the door leading down has been locked since the 31st of December 1945 and has never been reopened to the public. Everything inside is still there. The Guastavino vaulted ceilings, a tile vaulting technique pioneered by Spanish-born architect Rafael Guastavino, found only in the most important public buildings of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Brass chandeliers, their color shifted to deep green by more than 80 years of oxidation. Stained glass skylights, looking up toward the street above. Walls of hand-set mosaic tile that catch the yellow light of bulbs that are almost never switched on. No graffiti, no decay. No one there to cause either. Just time, standing still. The reason it closed had nothing to do with danger. No accident, no scandal. The station was shut down because of something so mundane it almost defies belief. The platform was curved. When New York acquired longer train cars in the 1940s, they could no longer stop flush against the City Hall platform. The gap between the train door and the platform edge was too wide to be safe. Rather than redesign the platform, the city chose to close the station. And in the more than 80 years since, no one has reversed that decision. The most beautiful station in the history of the New York subway has been sealed shut because of a platform gap that the city decided was cheaper to avoid than to fix. But City Hall is not the only one. Across the New York City subway network, at least 30 stations have been permanently closed. Some since the 1940s, others since the 1960s. Most were never demolished. They were simply left behind. The platform's still there, the station signs still on the walls, the corridors still intact but the lights off, the doors locked, and the city moving overhead as if they had never existed. If you know where to look, you can see them from the window of a moving train. The 18th Street station on the Lexington Avenue line closed in 1948. When the 6 train passes through, a darkened platform slides past the window in under 2 seconds. The station name is still on the wall. Some of the original mosaic tile is still intact. No one is standing there. Worth Street station closed in 1962, positioned between 2 active stops, less than a minute's ride from either. But no train pulls in anymore. Passengers sit in the carriage and slide past it without realizing that a complete, fully formed station is rolling by outside their window. The 91st Street station on the Upper West Side closed in 1959. Wooden platforms rotting in the dark, iron columns rusting in air that almost never moves. The lighting system dead for decades. The structure still standing because no one has ever spent the money to demolish something no one can see. That is the operating principle of every ghost station in this system. Don't demolish what no one can see. Don't explain what no one thinks to ask about. Just close the door, turn off the lights, and wait for people to forget. And people forgot. But in January 2026, just months before the World Cup began, something brought City Hall Station back into the news. New York City's incoming mayor held his swearing-in ceremony there. Not at City Hall, not at a public venue. Inside a station sealed since 1945, with no press presence and no public announcement. Accessible only to those who received a direct invitation. No one explained why. No one asked. And when millions of football fans flood into New York to watch the World Cup this summer, they will walk above those stations dozens of times without knowing that beneath their feet are spaces abandoned by time itself. Waiting rooms with no passengers, platforms with no trains, and corridors where the last light went out before many of them were born. But the ghost stations are only the empty part of this story. Because some parts are not empty. Deep inside the tunnel network beneath New York City, below the active subway lines, below the water mains and electrical conduits, further still into spaces that carry no name on any engineering diagram people are living. Not temporarily, not overnight, for years. In some cases, for decades. In American investigative journalism and urban anthropology, they came to be called the Mole People. The term emerged from New York Times reporting in the 1980s, when journalists began documenting the existence of informal communities living beneath the city, organized, established, and invisible to everyone above. The most documented of these underground spaces is the Freedom Tunnel running beneath Riverside Park on the west side of Manhattan, along a disused Amtrak rail corridor that stretches from north to south. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, this tunnel was home to hundreds of people. People with names, with histories, with a community. They were not a disorganized group of stragglers. They were a functioning society in miniature. Shelters built from reclaimed wood, cardboard, and salvaged metal constructed directly on the tunnel floor. Electrical lighting tapped from nearby power lines. Defined territories. Social hierarchies. A structure that maintained order in the dark. And at least one figure, a graffiti artist named Chris Pape, who went by the name Freedom, who lived in the tunnel long enough to cover its walls with large-scale murals that art critics would later describe as among the most significant examples of American street art in the 20th century. In 1993, journalist Jennifer Toth published The Mole People: Life in the Tunnels Beneath New York City, a first-hand account of what she witnessed after spending extended time inside the tunnels. The book sent a cultural shockwave through the city. New York, home to Wall Street, to skyscrapers, to Broadway, to lights that never go out, was hiding an entire parallel population, living completely cut off from the world above, directly beneath its own streets. The city's response was a mass eviction campaign in the mid-1990s. Tunnels were sealed, communities were broken up, the shelters were demolished. But the people did not disappear. They went deeper. By 2026, homelessness in New York City had reached its highest recorded level in decades. More than 150,000 people are without stable housing, the largest figure since the Great Depression. The subway system has once again become the shelter of last resort for those who have nowhere else to go. Through 2025 and into 2026, the city intensified its enforcement sweeps. Police cleared homeless individuals from stations with increasing frequency. Advocacy organizations documented the same pattern that played out in the 1990s. The people are not being helped. They are being pushed further into the sections of the system that no authority has the jurisdiction or the budget to reach. Deeper into the dark, deeper below the main tunnels, into spaces with no name. No one knows how many people are living in the ground beneath New York right now. No agency is counted, no map shows where they are, no database tracks their names. No one knows who they are. And when the lights of the 2026 World Cup illuminate the New York skyline this summer, those people will still be there. In the dark below, a few dozen meters from the surface, and an immeasurable distance from the world above it. But we have not gone deep enough yet. Leave the tunnels behind for a moment. Come to a place that over 750,000 people pass through every single day without any of them knowing what exists beneath their feet. Grand Central Terminal, the largest rail hub in New York, sitting at the intersection of 42nd Street and Park Avenue in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Its main concourse, with the vaulted ceiling, painted deep green and mapped with constellations, is one of the most photographed architectural interiors in the world. Films are shot here. Tourists fill it every hour. Nobody thinks about what's below. But Grand Central Terminal is not a train station. It is a city inside a city. And that city extends downward much further than anyone with public access has ever been permitted to see. Beneath the main concourse is a lower level. Beneath the lower level is a second sub-level. Beneath that, a third. And 9 stories below street level, in a room that carries no official name on any public document, is what the people who work at Grand Central quietly refer to as M42. During the Second World War, M42 was one of the most classified locations in North America. Inside that room, a bank of rotary converters, electrical transformers that supply power to the entire northeastern rail network of the United States. If M42 were destroyed, every military transport train on the East Coast would stop. Troops could not be moved. Equipment could not be shipped. The entire northeastern logistics chain of the American war effort would collapse. Nazi Germany knew this, and they tried to destroy it. Declassified records confirm that in 1942, a German sabotage team, Operation Pastorius, landed on the shore of Long Island with M42 among their primary targets. The FBI arrested the team before they could act, but the response from the United States War Department was immediate. Anyone who entered M42 without authorization was to be shot on sight. No interrogation, no trial. That order was never formally rescinded. M42 still exists beneath Grand Central Terminal today. Its precise location does not appear on any publicly available blueprint or map. But M42 is not the biggest secret Grand Central is keeping, because there is also Track 61. Track 61 is a private rail siding running directly beneath the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, east of Grand Central, with no connection to any active passenger line and no appearance on any public transit diagram. It was built in the 1930s as a freight delivery track for the building above it. But from the 1930s through the 1950s, Track 61 served a second purpose, one that the people of New York were never meant to know about. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, the man who led the country through both the Great Depression and World War II, had contracted polio in 1921. He used a wheelchair, and throughout his presidency, he was determined to keep that fact from the public, because in that era, a physically disabled president was perceived as a strategic vulnerability that enemies could exploit. Every time Roosevelt came to New York, his private presidential train did not stop at any public station. The train pulled directly onto track 61. From there, a specially constructed freight elevator, wide enough to accommodate the president's armored limousine, carried the car directly up into the Waldorf Astoria's private garage. Roosevelt moved in and out of the city without a single one of the millions of New Yorkers above him knowing he was there. No footsteps on a public sidewalk. No moment of being seen in a wheelchair. No trace at all. Track 61 still exists today, beneath the luxury suites and conference rooms of the Waldorf Astoria, the hotel where generations of American presidents and world leaders have historically stayed. The track is no longer in use, but it is still there. And if you ask the right questions of the right long-serving staff at Grand Central Terminal, some of them will quietly admit that they are not entirely certain what exists in every part of the building they work in every day. A station that 750,000 people pass through daily and beneath their feet. A shoot-on-sight order that was never officially lifted. A presidential secret rail line, and a power room that was more heavily guarded during World War II than any prison on American soil. Nobody asks, because nobody knows what to ask. Let's come back to the 19th of July 2026 one final time. The World Cup Final, MetLife Stadium, 82,500 people in the stands, billions more watching across the world. And at the center of all of it, New York City, the city that never sleeps. The city that represents the highest ambition of modern human civilization. That is what you see. But today we have passed through 4 layers of this city. The first layer, ground level. MetLife Stadium stands on marshland that served as a dumping ground for toxic industrial waste. And, if the court records are to be believed, for the organized crime families of New Jersey and New York, Barry's Creek is still being remediated after 40 years. And deeper in the mud that no one is digging up secrets the Meadowlands has kept across multiple generations. The second layer, just below the streets. At least 30 subway stations permanently closed, still intact in the dark, abandoned by time and deliberately left, unacknowledged by the city above them. The most beautiful station in the history of the New York subway sealed shut since 1945, and in January 2026, a newly elected mayor chose it as the location for his swearing-in ceremony, with no press and no explanation. The third layer, deeper still. Thousands of people with no names, no records, and no registered address, living inside tunnels that no authority has the reach to monitor, pushed further underground every time the city needs a clean face for a major event. This summer, as planes carrying millions of football fans land at JFK and Newark, those people will still be down there. The fourth layer, the deepest, beneath one of the busiest transit hubs on the planet. A wartime bunker with a shoot-on-sight order that was never formally lifted, a secret presidential rail line used to hide the physical reality of an American president from his own people, and a power room that was more heavily guarded during World War II than any prison on American soil. None of it on any map, none of it in any travel guide, none of it in any official account the city has ever published. 4 layers, 1 city. The 19th of July, 2026. I am not telling you New York is a bad city. Nobody could say that honestly. This is the city that absorbed tens of millions of immigrants across several centuries and made them New Yorkers. It is a city of free expression, of limitless creative ambition, of human energy, at a concentration that nowhere else on Earth comes close to matching. But every city has 2 faces. The face that tourism wants you to see, and the face that the city would prefer you never thought about. What makes New York different is this. Its 2 faces do not sit side by side. They sit on top of each other. The dark layer of New York is not in the outer boroughs, not in the neglected neighborhoods, not in the areas that tourist maps quietly shade in red. It sits directly beneath the most celebrated parts of the city. And on the 19th of July, 2026, when 82,500 people take their seats inside MetLife Stadium, when the starting lineups of 2 World Cup finalists walk out under the largest stage lighting apparatus ever assembled for a sporting event, they will not know any of this. They will not know about the toxic marshland beneath them. They will not know about the ghost stations preserved in the dark. They will not know about the thousands of people living without names in the tunnels below. They will not know about the shoot-on-sight order and the presidential rail line. And maybe none of that will touch their experience at all. But now you know. And when you watch that final, whether you're in the stadium or watching from somewhere on the other side of the world, I want to leave you with one question. Not about football. Not about New York. A question about every place we call great. How much do we not know about the places we think we understand? New York is only one example. The 2026 World Cup spans 16 stadiums across 3 countries. And every host city, every city that millions of football fans will set foot in this summer, carries layers that no travel guide will print before you book your ticket. Dallas, the city where an American president was assassinated, and where CIA files connected to that day are still being withheld from the public decades later. Vancouver ranked among the most livable cities in the world for years running, and the site of the most brutal serial killing case in Canadian history. Operating for years in plain sight of ordinary neighborhoods. Miami, all sunshine and ocean, and the city whose history of drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized violence shaped an entire decade of American life. If you want to know what lies beneath those cities, the things that the organizations running this tournament would never include in any promotional material, subscribe to this channel. Because we are only just getting started.